I'm not entirely sure if this has done what it did last month with going a bit wonky. So if anybody's out there, please let me know. And yes, there are Robs here, and hopefully other people will be joining in. Let's just... I think it went a bit weird again. No, she's here. I think people are finding us. Hurrah! Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. Well, so we're continuing from last month because we kind of ran out of time. As you know, Sherry's here. Hey, Sherry. And guess what? You're all going to have to join in again. With a little bit of... What's that, Rob? With a little bit of magic, I expect to see you referee an animated soccer match a la Bread Knobs and Broomsticks. Well, that could happen, except animated or otherwise, soccer/football. No, wouldn't do it. I'd have to say, no, I'm not messing about with your kicking balls around a field game, because no. Nelly doesn't like sport. It's just the way it is. And hey to Neshi and to Sherry and to Mary. Hello, welcome, and a joyful day to all of you. So, back to our show today, and back to the magic that we kind of ran out of space with last month. But in another way, it's probably good that we're doing a part 2, because the events over the weekend also connect in very smoothly to our discussion. So everybody's joining in again today. So be prepared to think about stuff and put your opinions up in the chat room. Well, last month we went through, let's just a bit of a recap. Started off with David Bowie, I Say Is a Sorcerer, etc., etc., etc. And then we went through, the ideas and thoughts of magic workers, magic users, the differences of sorcerers and witches and wizards and all that good stuff. And I was going to bring in some crystals and stones, but I ran out of time. I'm not doing that first off. We are going to start with the events of the weekend. It has been this time of year, it gets a bit crazy. Christmas is coming up, or Hanukkah, or any of the major religious festivals around this time of year. For us, pagans of whichever flavour you wish to suggest, it's the winter solstice, one of the, if not the most important festival, holy day of the year, the return of the light, the longest night, shortest day, and then the sun returns and the Mabon is reborn, and we start heading back into brighter and longer days. So it all happens around this time of year, so it always gets a bit crazy. You know what it's like in the shops, and so on. So work-wise, it always gets a bit insane. People are always trying to sell us stuff, probably that we don't need, and or to give away as gifts to people who probably don't need it either. It gets insane. But apart from that, this weekend was the Orders Winter Gathering at Glastonbury. So it's only a one-day get-together. There's a couple of hundred of us all there, and this year I was lucky enough to get a ticket. And it started off with a ceremony at the Chalice Well. I will put up a link to the Chalice Well in a bit. I ran out of time before I started trundling on with this. So we had our Chalice Well ceremony, and then we all gather up at the Glastonbury Town Hall where the whole thing takes place. Glastonbury is an amazing place, absolutely wonderful, wonderful place. It's so deeply connected with all the legends and myths of Britain that you can't even begin to express it. It's just incredible. It's one of the, if not the only place, pretty much anywhere I know, where you can, well, let's put it this way. I heard a story of one story is that if you're out with a friend and you get separated and you can't find this guy, and you wander into a shop and say, "Hey, you haven't seen my mate, have you? He's here somewhere. He kind of looks like a wizard." Well, then you get the funny look because that's not unusual in Glastonbury. You see, it's the one place that I know that I can walk down the road in my ceremonial gear and nobody will notice. It'll just look like it's your regular clothes. You know, people wander around the supermarkets in the pajamas. I've heard of people in the supermarket with a pendulum dowsing over the fruit and veg to find the best piece. That's Glastonbury in a nutshell, and it's wonderful. Everywhere should be like that, but that's just what I think. So then we had the mistletoe ceremony, which is always quite magical, and people have come from all over the world. You know, from Canada, Germany, Portugal, Moni Jocelyn, and you know, Canada. Did I say Canada? I can't remember. So, there was a couple from Oregon. So yes, exactly. That's the kind of thing. That's exactly it. And rather like Sedona, I don't know. I've never been to Sedona. I know it's somewhere in the USA, but exactly where I don't know. So anyway, So let me just show you this one. Got a picture here. First time ever anybody. Let me just do that. That's a bit better. First time ever any of you lot have seen me in. How do I do that? Oh, there it is. Arizona. Thank you, Sherry. Me in my ceremonial gear. So there you go. That's me. California. It's somewhere over there. So that's me in my ceremonial gear. Personally, I dress like that all the time, but you know, it's not really easy to get in and out of a truck when you're wearing robes and a cloak. So that brought me on to thinking about ceremonial gear, ceremonial clothing, ritual clothing, and is it really important? Because we can do a ritual anytime, any place, anywhere. Oh, I'm just gonna bring that one up because it's thank you, Neshi. And yeah, you do feel different. Anyway, I'm jumping ahead. Thank you, Sherry. I'm jumping ahead. Sorry. So ritual clothing, etc. So yes, we can do it anytime, any place, with whatever we've got on. And in my opinion, if you've got time to do if there's a moment to do a ritual of any description, whether it be simple or complicated, if you don't do it, you've missed an opportunity. Never, for me, if you get the chance to do a ritual, just do it. Whether you be on your own, whether you be with a group, doesn't matter. If the idea comes up, run with it. It's empowering in ways I can't describe. But if you've got chance to do that same ritual in clothing that is special to you, whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be robes and a cloak. It can, whatever is right for you. That's those special clothes that you use for that, for any ritual, for any ceremony. It takes on an extra dimension because it's that preparation. It's the beginning, the beginning of the I'll just notice Neshi's comment, which I'll bring up in a sec, because you know what I'm like. I will lose my train of thought. The preparation that you put into at the beginning is, for me, part of the ceremony itself, part of the ritual, and it leads you in. So where's my thing? There it is. So the thing is to find your way to feel the strength of you with or without your ceremonial gear on. Maybe that's why we play dress up as children. Yes. And yes and no in how I've just hopefully explained my personal point of view. Find your way to the thing. So the thing is to find your way to feel the strength of you with or without. Yes, but if we can have the ceremonial gear as that preparation into that ritual or ceremony, I think that's more. Hang on, but note by profile pic I have on one of my favourite shawls. It is happy colour for me. Yeah. So you do have that. You have brought that piece in. So it doesn't, in one way, it doesn't have to be the whole ceremonial thing, just a piece of it. Yeah. If it helps mentally to prepare you to go into that ceremony, do it. If you don't feel the need for it, then that's fine as well. In the end, it's all personal preference. So, and Sherry's saying the robes or ceremonial clothing create such a powerful connection, and that's, I think, my point. It is connecting with that ritual. Case in point, weddings, wedding dresses. Um, um, the guys have the suits. The bride has the wedding dress. In effect, that is ceremonial clothing. So, but it was something I was thinking about. Personally, I would always try and do it, have that ceremonial garb on whenever possible. And it really does help me. I will feel really comfortable in it. I do. I feel really comfortable in it. It really helps me get into that mindset to connect with those energies and the spirits around. Bring this up from Rob. Magic is, at its essence, psychological because all is mind, but psychology is entirely personal, as relationships to other humans and to nature and objects is also mind. You got me stroking my beard here, Rob. I'm going to come back to that because if you're working from a psychological point of view, then yes. But I would disagree in I'm going to think about that a little bit longer. Bringing up Nesh's thing, she does agree that when we consciously prepare for a ceremony, that process nudges our mental mind that we are about to enter a sacred place, something's happening. Yes, it is. It's that extra something. We are preparing for something special, something magical, something important. And it can, from the moment we start that preparation, we're already within the ritual in some ways. we're on that journey towards it, and then when we afterwards we've finished, and whatever happens after the main ritual, eventually clothes are changed, and then that is the ultimate end of that ritual. So, hang on. Is not entirely personal, stupid iOS keyboard. I don't get that one, Rob. That you'll have to explain a bit more on that. Anyway, so to continue on, what was I saying? So yes, so that is me in my ceremonial gear. So within the ceremonies, I won't go into details because that's for that moment. But one thing I want, but they in themselves have had their own magical expressions within them, and the magic of them. But later on, hang on, let me bring this back up from Rob just before I do move on. In his theological training, ritual is meant to boost the psychological aspect, to put us in the mindset to accomplish something for them, the mass. Yeah. I think where I differ from that idea is that magic and ritual, coming from the psychological aspect, to me feels like you're doing it for yourself, for your own mind, or by extension for the other people, the minds within the minds of the other people, which brings it inward. Whereas I see magic of, for whatever the reason the magic is performed, that is not just an inward, doesn't have just an inward, but also an outward effect that spreads out, which doesn't just necessarily mean for the psychological effects for people, but also for the land, the sky, the seas, the rocks, the birds, because we psychologically we can't get into those mindsets. Does that make sense? So it's not just an internal effect and process, it has an external effect and process as well. That's where I think I struggle with the psychology of it. It's not entirely personal, as all is mind, not only the mind. We can see how this works in a group context by simply watching the news or advertisements. Yeah, but again, I would, you're still taking it into, for me, you're still taking it into a personal experience, people only, humans only. And that's, I think, again, where I differ. Magic isn't humans only. simply because it's not just the physical world, it's the spiritual world, the mythological world, etc. Non-human minds, yes, but if it's saying all is mind, then that would suggest that there is no physical or other expression. Have to think about that some more so as I can get it straight in my head. So, yeah, we're right. Back to my point. Well, not my point. The story. So, we had a couple of talks in the afternoon. One of them, the first one, was called Albion Dreamtime, which I'll come back to that comment in a minute, Rob. Albion Dreamtime, which they've taken the word Dreamtime from the Australian Aboriginal people, obviously. But to put it into context, this couple went around the UK looking for the sacred sites that our ancestors would have recognized as sacred sites, as magical places. But to qualify that by looking for places that were not constructed, such as Stonehenge, such as Avebury. They were looking for places older than that, natural places, waterfalls, um, um, mountainous areas, rocks. There were caves, and so on and so on and so on. They have got a Facebook page called, funnily enough, Albion Dreamtime. Go and have a look at it. I'll put the note up again for you to go and have a look if you want. But it was an interesting thing because I mean I'm really connected with Stonehenge, and it's one of the places that calls to me all the time. But equally, there are all these other places that are all around us that we might miss if we don't keep our eyes and our senses open to the magic of those places. Might just be a single tree in a field that has this magical energy around it. But if you don't take the time to open your awareness to them, you can just walk straight past them. We're all, like I say, we're all have that the idea that sacred places are something we've built a lot of things on sacred places like Stonehenge, like Avebury, like Karnak in France, and so on and so on. So I'll get to my point eventually, I'm sorry. It's about finding the sacred places in all the ordinary places as well. in the world that hasn't had a monument of some description put on it, and it was quite interesting. And it again opened my, I suppose, with the year that has I've had, I've been somewhat, what's the word I'm looking for? Somewhat, I don't want to say closed off, but distracted by other things so that I'm not seeing as much of the magic as I usually do. So it reawakened that need to open my awareness to go and look for them. So I'm just going to, before I get on to the next one, which was, I mean, that was a good talk, but the next one I'm going to tell you about is proper magic. So let me just bring this up. I've called what you are describing as anthrocentric. Psyche is simply Greek for the soul. Psyche was also the Greek goddess of the soul, and she was the wife of Eros. I think they had a daughter, or was it a son? Well, their child was called Hedone, and I think that's, yeah, they were a bit, wild. I think that's where the term hedonism comes from. But anyway, that's by the by. But yeah, soul, the mind and the soul are connected. I think the next story is going to illustrate my point a little bit better. So, the next story, the next talk was by a man called David Bramwell. Now, he's done things on BBC Radio 3 and 4 off and on. He's written books, he's done podcasts and all the rest of things. I'd never heard of him before. And he's an absolutely fascinating guy. Fascinating. So, a brief rundown of the story that he told us. He moved from Lincolnshire into Yorkshire to a town called Doncaster, which has been there since before Roman times, but when the Romans came over, they called it Danum, and eventually it became Doncaster, etc., etc. So he moved to this town, and this was when he was a kid. I can't remember exactly how old he said he was at this point. So they moved to this new house, and he ran upstairs, or he went out into the garden to look to see what he could find. And in this garden, he found an old cup with the handle broken off. Now, from his garden, the most prominent feature on the skyline, obviously now we're not talking a huge metropolis here. This was Doncaster back in the 70s, so it wasn't a huge town, but it was big enough. But there's these two water towers. So he picked up this cup and he felt the urge to take this cup and place it under the largest of the two towers. And he posed the thought that this was possibly his first act of worship. I should state that his talk was entitled "The Cult of Water." So, and he grows up there. Now later, the family grows, and in 1976, they take a trip. Now, there is a place over here that was a valley that was flooded to create a reservoir. And in this valley was a village. Cannot remember its name. I don't think it ever came up. But this village was evacuated and the houses demolished. The church, however, was left standing, possibly out of respect, possibly with possibly for fear of divine repercussions. But the church was left standing, and the villagers moved on, and the valley was flooded. Now, in times of drought, obviously the reservoir, the water level drops, and at certain times the church became visible. And in 1976, we had one of those summers that it was hot and dry for months on end, and the water level dropped. And David and his family, on one of their days out, went to see the drowned village, which is what it got called, the drowned village. And they saw the church and had a good day and moved on, and that was it. So when he came to write this talk, this lecture, he went looking for photographs to illustrate it, because he did a little film with his talk, and I'll continue that bit in a moment. But this is the first piece of magic within the talk that I'm going to explain to you. When he was he went to find photographs and illustrations of the drowned village, and he didn't find anything after, I believe, 1947. There were no photographs. And where are the photographs from 1976? Because a lot of people had gone to see this place. Well, it turns out that in 1947, when there was a big drought, the area got so many visitors, it was overwhelmed going to see the church. So the church was blown up. The church wasn't there in 1976. They couldn't have seen it, but they did. And not just him, his father and other people saw the church. And there was even a report in the Yorkshire Post newspaper saying that, talking about all the people that had seen the church that had been demolished 30 years before. Pause for effect. So, now, back to the main story. David has a deep fear of water. Dark, still, deep water, rivers. He's afraid of water. I can't remember what it's called now. But running through Doncaster, there is the River Don. And the River Don and Doncaster, through all its name changes, is connected to the river goddess Danu. And as he was growing up, the river was a sluggish, I want to say dead thing, and It pretty well was. Let me just bring this up from Sherry. Yes, I believe sacred and magical spaces appear and disappear to us in physical reality according to our intention and state of consciousness. Yes, that is a very good way of putting it. So, oh, done that wrong. So back to Danu and the river. So the story that he was telling us was the story of a journey, of a pilgrimage in seeking to discover why he is afraid of water and about the river. So the first thing he did, he went to see a wizard. A wizard called Alan Moore. I'll post his name so you can go and discover him. He is actually put. I'll come back to that. Anyway, so he went to see a wizard. And the wizard explained to him that the river, all forms of water, are related to the goddess, to the feminine. So perhaps he ought to go and consult a witch. And so he did. A witch in Sheffield, cannot remember her name. But she's got a shop in Sheffield, so he went and visited this witch. And he explained his problem to her. So, she did some work with him, and she said, actually, your problem's not with the water, it's with Vulcan, Roman god of fire, blacksmiths. Oh, why is that? And she said, come with me. So she took him upstairs and pointed across the city. And the highest, I think it's the town hall. I could be wrong, but I think it's the town hall. There's a statue of Vulcan on the on Sheffield City Hall, because Sheffield was a big industrial steelworking city. Obviously, a lot of that's dropped off now, but back in the 19th and 20th centuries, it was the steelworks were everywhere. So, and the River Don runs through Sheffield, and the witch explained to him that the masculine and feminine energies are out of balance. Vulcan, there's a battle between the goddess and the god, the masculine and the feminine, the fire and the water, and something needs to be done about it. And he can make a start of that. And she said, you need to go and find the source of the Don, the source of the river. And so his pilgrimage eventually begins, and he makes his way down to the river. Oh, that was it. And he has to make an offering to the goddess. And he says, what offering should I make? And she looked at him and she just simply said, oh, you'll know it when you see it. So off he goes to make his pilgrimage to the source of the Don. And that's where the second piece of magic, real deep, proper magic, comes into the story. He makes his way down to the river near where he lives, scrambles down the bank to walk the length of the river. And on the bank, sitting in the mud, there's the cup with the broken handle that he placed under the water tower many years before. So he digs the cup out, washes it off, And consciously, in my head, this is how I see him do it. He consciously offers the cup, and the cup as an offering to the goddess, and throws it into the middle of the river. So the cup itself represents the feminine. The river represents the feminine, the goddess, the divine feminine. And his journey begins. And along the way, there are other little things. Now I can't remember. Now I really wanted to get the transcript of his talk, which I've got his email address, and I've had a chat with him, and I'm going to get this as a little book. I think, if I remember correctly, somebody said it was available on Lulu. If it is, I'll find it and post it. I'm not going to post it to you. I'll post the link on the page. So, but the magic, and he goes that within the talk. I mean, this was an hour long, maybe a bit more, with the film. So me expressing it to you won't give you the feeling of the magic that was running through the whole story, but it gives you an idea. Now, there is a Radio 3 program which is related to this talk called Danu, Dead Flows the Don. Now, I have posted a link to that program. Hopefully, you'll be able to listen to it. But you know what the Tinterweb's like, because I've had it on occasion. This program isn't available in your region or whatever. I don't know. But if you can, if it works, have a listen, because it's not the whole of the talk that I heard, but its essence is in there, with clips of Alan Moore and other things running through it as well. So have a listen. Try and have a listen. I can't urge you enough. And so I hope that gives you a flavour of the weekend. And it was filled with magical and druidy goodness. And it was very, what's the word I'm looking for? Empowering, invigorating. It really was. It was very invigorating. So, have I got any more comments? Nope. But anyway, so just slightly back onto the story. From the past to now, and the changes along the river, and the reinvigoration of the river, and the loss of the steelworks, the goddess is definitely winning over winning the battle with Vulcan, as things are now. But that was the other thing. There was a quote on the film that we saw, which I wrote down because I thought it was very, I don't know, there's something in the quote. You'll see it when you hear it. You'll understand what I mean. And this is the quote. I didn't make this up. Apparently, it's an old English saying. Now, I'd never heard it before this, So I'm putting it up, pinning it up somewhere because it's a good one. The old pagan gods, when ousted by Christianity, took refuge in the rivers, where they still dwell. It's just wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So hopefully you get an idea of the flavour of the weekend that I had. It was really, really good. Really good. Quite an important one for me personally because of yes, it was. It really was, Sherry. And Mary, yes, you will find stuff about Alan Moore quite easily. Quite easily. So the time I've been rattling on quite a lot now. I really have. I kind of wanted it to be more conversation like we had last month, but I'm sorry, but I kind of took over trying to just get all this stuff out of my head. Would you like to know about some crystals? Seeing we've been talking about magic, perhaps you would like me to suggest some crystals that could be useful in magical works? Because I can. Oh, I'm going to tell you anyway. So, first one I'm going to bring up is one called bronzite. Bear in mind that every stone and crystal that I am going to suggest has other properties. Sherry says yes. As does Nishi, as did Mary. What was I saying? So we all know they have multiple properties, but we're talking about magic. So let's stick with that one point and how they might be able to assist us. So here's the first one. And this is bronzite. I think this one's a fairly easy one to get hold of. And bronzite in magical work is used purely for... Oh, that's what I was going to talk about. I'll jump back to that in a minute. Purely for guarding against dark magic, as a protection against those people that want to try and perform dark magic or magic in some way against us. Now, obviously, if you're using magic, you don't use it against anybody. You don't you do it for people to help in lots of different ways, but you don't do it to the detriment of another person or situation or etc. Anything that you're trying to do bad to anybody out there in the world that thinks that that's a good idea, don't. It's a bad idea because the universe doesn't like that kind of thing. Yes, you have. Yes, you have, Neshi. Because anybody doing dark magic, there is within Druidry and in Wicca, witchcraft, and other areas, there is this thing we have called the law of threefold return. I may have mentioned it at some point. I think I've mentioned it somewhere on some. I think it was on Nesh's show a little while ago. Yeah, the law of threefold return. You do something dark, and the universe will punish you for it. Or are you punishing yourself? Interesting. So there's Bronzite. Let's get rid of that. And there's me. And yes, I'm going to do this one. The next two. This one you might be familiar with. You may have seen this very picture before. And it's called Merlinite. I love Merlinite. That's one of my bits. I adore Merlinite. Don't confuse it with something called Mystic Merlinite, because Mystic Merlinite is a completely different thing altogether. That was the term Mystic Merlinite was actually an attempt at a trade name for something called Madagascan Gabbro. So different, utterly different. Merlinite. Oh, let me just tell you this. I know I may have mentioned it before, but Merlinite, you can have a lot of Merlinite is dendritic opal is the easiest form of Merlinite or stone that is sold as Merlinite. Yes, it connects to it, but the best Merlinite is either dendritic agate or dendritic chalcedony. I'll write it out later. And it's always black and white because there are other dendritic stones out there like tree agate, moss agate, etc., etc. There are other dendritics, but Merlinite is always like this, black and white, and it's glorious. Oh, and so working with that, I mean, let's start with the name Merlinite. It connects with Merlin, the great wizard. Merlin, wizard, druid, sorcerer. You know, you can attach a lot of magical references to Merlin, and they'd all be correct. So, if you want to connect with Merlin's energy, here we go. Especially if you're doing it within in a shamanic way, you want to connect with Merlin, then this is the stone to use. You can use it in shamanic practice anyway. It's still a great one to use, and magical practice and ritual, shamanic or otherwise, it's really, really good. But get used to it. It's very powerful, as they all are, really. So that's that one. This one's a new one on me, so I don't know a huge amount about it. I'm going to run over. Does anybody have a problem with that? Let me do that. Yep. Magic is everywhere. Anyway, so never used this, never experienced it, but I found it, and I will find some. This little beauty. Now it's often found as in geode form. This one is quite a rare one, so it'll probably be quite expensive. No, keep going. You can go over with the showtime. Okay, cool. So, I don't know how easy you might find any of this, but if I find it first, you are not getting your hands on it. So, this is Druzy Blue Chalcedony. And as you can see, hopefully you can see, tiny, tiny little crystals within the geode. Now this is called, then this is why, I mean, I really love the other name that this comes under, right? You'll probably find it more under the name Druzy Blue Chalcedony as its term, but the other name for it is Glorious, and that's what I'm going to use, Avalonite. Avalon relating to Glastonbury. Avalon and Glastonbury are basically an interchangeable term. Avalon meaning the Isle of Apples. There's so many apple orchards around Glastonbury. The island nature of it, it used to flood around there, and it's quite hilly. I mean, think of the Glastonbury tour. That's until floodwaters recede. There's all these islands in the whole area. It's glorious. So Avalonite, and I mean then we go in. Not just what's the word I'm looking for? Not just connecting to that place, that area of deep magic. You're connecting again with Arthurian legend, with Merlin, and so on and so on and so on. So, and when you working with this, from what I've read, this connects into ancient magic. We're talking the magic of our ancestors, the magic of the ancient landscape, the ancient magic of the old trees. And we were talking real deep, old, powerful magic. And within that, it's not just the magic of the trees and the ancient, our ancient ancestors, and the world, the physical world. But this one will also help you connect with the mythical realms. We call them mythical realms. Right, let me just bring this up. Druzy. Druzy, it depends where you come from. If you're British, you would spell it Drusy, or in America, Druzy, and I won't pronounce it anything other than a Z. I refuse. So there. And I'm not sorry. Chalcedony. See, let me type this out. I don't know how you do that. I know Neshi has things going across the screen sometimes, but how do you do that? Is that it? Oh, text on screen. Type something. D-R-U-Z-Y. Why Blue Chalcedony. There you go. Wow, I never knew I could do that. How very strange. But I'll post the photos and with their names, and then you can go off and find them. So back to the journeying, shamanic journeying into the mythical realms. Be careful. Be respectful. And connecting also and communicating with, especially communication with the fairy realm, the fae folk, the grey folk, elves and fairies. And we're not talking Tinkerbells. You know what I'm saying? We've had this discussion before. Hang on. The energy of this because it's causing breakup in the broadcast. I'll take it down. There you go. That better? So yeah, it just looks amazing. So I am going to actively be looking for that. Actively. So, you know, if you see me barreling down the street, it's because I've seen some. Get out of the way. I will trample you. I will. Anyway, so right now, last few bits. So we've gone through a few of the crystals. I'll post them, I promise. The talk and the radio show, I'll put up links for those. And I'll try and put a link to the Albion Dreamtime people. And so on and so on. So magically, one last little item. You've all heard of amulets and talismans. They are terms that we've seen used, and we've seen them used interchangeably. But they're not the same thing. The easiest way to describe it, an amulet have I got this the right way around? I'm second guessing myself now. An amulet is an item, and they're usually worn around the neck, as is a talisman, or a talisman and anyway. An amulet is an object that has magical properties that helps you perform a magical task of whatever description. A talisman is a magical object, similar in the way that Bronzite does, is to help protect you against something, whether it be dark magic, whether it be demons, etc. Whatever it is that you feel that you require from protection of. I don't know, the IRS, you know. So Those are the difference. And I wanted to mention that last time, and I kind of ran out of time, and I've kind of run out of time, and I've gone over, and I'm really sorry. So I hope Rob's disappeared somewhere. I don't know why. Have I upset him? I don't know. Anyway, what was I saying? So anyway, I hope that our yes, exactly, Neshi, opening portals. Yeah. It, oh, he's on his 9 to 5 job. I see. I thought I'd upset him. So I hope these. I mean, here's a thing. Right, let me just bring this one point in. The story of David and his story, finding the cup in the garden, placing it under the water tower, and then discovering that same cup on his journey, his pilgrimage for the goddess for Danu and the River Don. One of the people that I was with said to me, I mean, everybody. The guy got a standing ovation for his talk, and he'd never experienced that before. He'd never experienced the connection, people connecting with his story like that ever before. But we're a room full of druids. We're bound to. So anyway, but somebody asked me, even said to me, even if is that part of the story real? Did they find the cup in the garden? Did he then find it on the riverbank? Is that part of the story real? Or is it a tool to illustrate the story, to get people interested, to pull people into the story? Let's just say this. As far as I'm concerned, everything he said is real. All the magic that ran through that story is real. Magic is real. Don't doubt it. Just open yourself up to it, and it will reveal itself. A door blows open, and you could say there's a window open and it's a draft, a breeze has blown the door open. Or is it one of your ancestors come to advise you? That's what magic is. Watch. It's there. We just have to be open to it so that we can find it. Real or experienced as real, is there a difference really? No. And yes. And no. Real, experienced as real. I experienced it as real, but then in the wider world, the wider existence, it wasn't real. Real is real. See all magic as real. I've got to go. I shall. Don't go away. I'll be back. Anybody still there? Anyway, it's real. Real is real, and it's real. That's how I think of it. So, last bit before I have to go. The question was the rhetorical and an indirect defense of Nellie's "Is it real?" Okay. Yeah, anyway, Mum shouted, was needed for a second there. Well, I'm going to have to go in a minute. So, yeah, it's all real. Magic is real. Anyway, so last thing I have to say at the moment is taking a break. I mentioned it last month. Taking a break from a little while. So I'm not disappearing. I'll be floating around somewhere. So if you've got questions, curiosities, want to put stones and crystals out there, the page is still running. I've not disappeared. So if you want me, get in touch and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. Just so the page is open and I'll try and get stuff out there, posted, interesting things that crop up along the way. So there won't be a show next month. Well, at the moment, as things stand, because everything's just got a little chaotic for me over this past year, I'm just taking this break. And but yeah, so I will see you all again soon. Just the page is there. Use it. Keep in touch. So until I do see you again, I shall. I can't help it. I'm listening out for her. I know she's going to shout again any second. I shall say goodbye for now, and I shall see you all again soon. Peace and blessings to each and every one of you, and to the whole world. And yeah, I see you all again soon. You know, I'll be floating around somewhere. You don't get rid of me that easily. So until then, where's the stop button? There it is. See you all soon. Thank you, Rob and Mary and Neshi and Sherry for joining in. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you need crystal stones, get in touch with Sherry. She's got a store, but you can't have any of the raw money. And sorry, Jocelyn. I didn't. Yeah. And thank you, Jocelyn, for joining in. Thank you, everybody. Have a joyous day. I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.